Every morning you wake up, you hold the power to redesign your entire existence. Yet most people surrender this sacred opportunity before their feet touch the floor. Right now, I want you to think about this morning. What was the very first thought that entered your consciousness when you opened your eyes? Was it gratitude? Was it worry? Was it excitement for what lies ahead? Or dread about what you must face? Raise your hand if your first thought was something positive, something that filled you with energy and purpose. Keep it up. Now raise your hand if your first thought was about problems, stress, or what you don't want to happen today. Look around. This simple exercise reveals why some people create extraordinary lives, while others remain trapped in cycles of mediocrity. Your morning thoughts are not random occurrences. They are the architects of your entire day, the foundation upon which every experience builds. When you bless your morning with conscious, intentional thoughts, you set in motion forces that most people never understand, never harness, never even recognize exist. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman who worked in a cramped office cubicle for 12 years. Every morning, her alarm would jolt her awake, and her first thought was always the same: another day in prison. She would stumble to the bathroom, look in the mirror, and mentally rehearse everything wrong with her life. Her boss was unreasonable, her co-workers were incompetent, her salary was insufficient, her apartment was too small, her life was going nowhere. For 12 years, Sarah's mornings began with this mental poison, and somehow she expected her days to taste sweet. Then something shifted. Not her circumstances. Those remained exactly the same. Her boss was still difficult. Her salary hadn't increased. Her apartment hadn't grown larger. But Sarah discovered something that changed everything. She learned that the first moments of consciousness are the most malleable, the most receptive to intentional programming. Instead of allowing her mind to automatically default to complaint and victimhood, she began blessing her mornings with gratitude and possibility. The first thought she consciously chose was, "I am grateful for this gift of another day to create something beautiful." Within 3 months, Sarah's entire life transformed, not because her external circumstances magically changed, but because her internal landscape shifted so dramatically that she began attracting different opportunities, different people, different possibilities. She started a side business that eventually became her full-time career. She moved to a home she loves. She found a partner who shares her vision for life. What happened to Sarah? She learned that blessing every morning changes how you think, and changing how you think changes everything else. She stopped being a victim of her circumstances and became the creator of her experiences. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to really consider this. When you wake up tomorrow morning, will you continue the unconscious pattern of mental complaint and worry, or will you claim your birthright as a conscious creator? Because that choice, that single simple choice, determines whether you spend your days building the life you want or reinforcing the life you're trying to escape. The first hour after you wake up is sacred time. It's when your subconscious mind is most receptive, when your mental and emotional patterns for the entire day get established. Think of it this way: if your mind were a musical instrument, your morning thoughts are the tuning process. Get the tuning right, and everything that follows creates harmony. Get it wrong, and even the most beautiful song becomes discordant noise. Most people wake up and immediately tune their minds to the frequency of problems. They check their phones and flood their consciousness with other people's opinions, complaints, and manufactured urgencies. They rehearse their worries, anticipate their struggles, and wonder why their days feel chaotic and unfulfilled. But when you consciously bless your morning, you tune your mind to the frequency of solutions, opportunities, and creative possibilities. You become a magnet for circumstances that match your elevated consciousness. This isn't mystical thinking, it's practical psychology combined with spiritual law. Your thoughts create your emotions drive your actions produce your results. Change the thoughts and you change everything downstream. The morning is when you have the greatest power to choose your thoughts deliberately, rather than accepting whatever random mental chatter happens to arise. Consider this: a farmer doesn't wake up and randomly throw seeds in whatever direction feels convenient that morning. He prepares the soil, selects the finest seeds, plants them with intention and care, then tends them consistently until harvest time. Your morning thoughts are seeds. Your daily experiences are the harvest. What kind of seeds are you planting? When you bless your morning with thoughts of gratitude, you plant seeds of abundance. When you bless your morning with vision and purpose, you plant seeds of achievement. When you bless your morning with love and appreciation, you plant seeds of beautiful relationships. The law is exact. You reap what you sow, but only if you sow consciously. This is where most people struggle. They want the harvest of happiness, success, and fulfillment, but they keep planting seeds of complaint, worry, and limitation. Then they wonder why their garden produces weeds instead of flowers.
Success doesn't come from changing your circumstances. Success comes from changing yourself, and the most powerful time to create that change is in the first moments of consciousness each day. External conditions are effects, not causes. When you transform your internal state through morning blessing, external conditions begin shifting to match your elevated consciousness.
But let's be practical about this. What does it actually mean to bless your morning? It starts with gratitude. Not the superficial, I'm grateful for my health, my family, and my job recitation that most people mumble without feeling, but genuine appreciation for the miracle of consciousness itself. You woke up, you're alive. You have another opportunity to create, to love, to contribute, to grow. Then you consciously choose thoughts that align with who you want to become rather than who you've been. Instead of immediately reviewing your problems, you review your possibilities. Instead of focusing on what you lack, you focus on what you can give. Instead of approaching the day with anxiety about what might go wrong, you approach it with excitement about what might go right. This shift in morning consciousness creates what scientists call neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to form new neural pathways. Every time you choose elevated thoughts, you strengthen neural pathways associated with optimism, creativity, and solution-oriented thinking. Every time you default to negative thoughts, you strengthen pathways associated with limitation, victimhood, and problem-focused thinking. Your brain becomes what you repeatedly think. Bless your mornings with thoughts of possibility, and your brain becomes wired for recognizing and creating possibilities. Poison your mornings with thoughts of limitation, and your brain becomes wired for seeing only obstacles and problems. The most successful people in every field share this common trait. They guard their morning consciousness like a sacred treasure. They don't allow the random thoughts of an undisciplined mind to determine their mental and emotional state for the day. They choose their thoughts deliberately, consciously, consistently. I know what some of you are thinking. I don't have time for elaborate morning rituals. I have responsibilities, schedules, obligations. This is the greatest lie we tell ourselves. You don't have time not to bless your morning. The few minutes you invest in conscious morning preparation save you hours of inefficiency, confusion, and emotional turbulence throughout the day. A pilot doesn't skip the pre-flight checklist because he's in a hurry. A surgeon doesn't skip preparation because the patient is waiting. Your life deserves the same level of careful preparation. 5 conscious minutes in the morning create more value than 5 hours of unconscious activity later. The practice is simple. Before you do anything else, before you check your phone or think about your to-do list, you consciously choose thoughts that elevate your consciousness. You can express gratitude for 3 specific things. You can visualize yourself moving through the day with grace, confidence, and purpose. You can set an intention for how you want to show up in the world. The key is consistency. One morning of positive thinking won't transform your life any more than one day of exercise will transform your body, but 30 days of conscious morning blessing will create noticeable changes in your perspective, your energy, and your results. 3 months will create dramatic changes. A year will make you almost unrecognizable to your former self. This isn't about denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about approaching reality from a position of power rather than powerlessness. When you bless your morning with elevated consciousness, you don't eliminate challenges, you develop the mental and emotional capacity to handle challenges with wisdom and strength. Problems become opportunities for growth. Obstacles become invitations for creativity. Setbacks become setups for comebacks. Not because you're living in fantasy, but because you're approaching life from a consciousness that naturally sees solutions rather than just problems. The person who wakes up blessing their morning and the person who wakes up cursing their circumstances may face identical external challenges throughout the day, but they will experience completely different realities because they're operating from completely different levels of consciousness. One sees opportunities where the other sees obstacles. One finds solutions where the other finds excuses. One creates connections where the other creates conflict. One builds while the other complains. The difference isn't in their circumstances, it's in their consciousness. This is the fundamental truth that separates those who create extraordinary lives from those who settle for ordinary ones. Your external world is a reflection of your internal world, and your internal world is most malleable in those precious first moments of awareness each morning. Bless those moments consciously and you begin blessing your entire existence. As we continue exploring this transformation, you'll see how this morning consciousness connects to every aspect of creating the life you truly want, how it aligns you with the natural patterns of success and shields you from the hidden patterns of self-sabotage that keep most people trapped in cycles of frustration and mediocrity. These natural patterns of success operate according to universal laws that are as reliable as gravity, as predictable as the sunrise. When you align your morning consciousness with these patterns, you begin
begin working with the fundamental forces that govern all achievement rather than against them. But when you remain unconscious of these patterns, you unknowingly sabotage yourself at every turn. Life moves in cycles. This is the first pattern you must understand. Just as nature follows the rhythm of seasons, your life follows rhythms of challenge and opportunity, contraction and expansion, planting and harvest. The farmer who plants seeds in winter will starve. The farmer who expects immediate harvest will quit too soon. But the farmer who understands the seasons prospers year after year. Right now, think about the most difficult period in your life. Was there something valuable that grew from that difficulty? Some strength you developed, some wisdom you gained, some opportunity that emerged? Raise your hand if you can see how a past challenge eventually led to something beneficial.
This is the law of cycles in action. Winter always precedes spring. Your darkest moments are often the soil from which your greatest growth emerges. But here's what most people miss. The quality of your morning consciousness determines how quickly you move through difficult cycles and how fully you capitalize on opportunity cycles. When you wake up blessing your consciousness, you align yourself with constructive cycles. When you wake up cursing your circumstances, you extend destructive cycles. The cycle continues until you learn what it came to teach you. Morning blessing accelerates learning, which accelerates positive cycles. Consider two people facing identical financial difficulties. Both lose their jobs on the same day. Both have the same savings. Both face the same market conditions. One wakes up each morning focused on scarcity, limitation, and fear. The other wakes up each morning focused on opportunity, creative solutions, and possibilities. Who do you think recovers faster? Who creates a better situation than what they lost? The difference isn't luck or circumstances. It's consciousness. The person operating from blessed consciousness sees opportunities that fear-based consciousness cannot perceive. They take actions that scarcity consciousness would never consider. They attract resources and relationships that victim consciousness repels. This brings us to the second fundamental pattern, the difference between reaction and response. Most people live their entire lives in reaction mode. Something happens, and they automatically react based on past conditioning, current emotions, or social programming. They bounce through life like pinballs, controlled by whatever force hits them next. But conscious people live in response mode. They observe what happens, consider their options, choose their response based on their values and goals, rather than their impulses and fears. The gap between stimulus and response is where your power lives. Morning blessing expands that gap. When your morning consciousness is elevated, you approach each situation from a place of centeredness, rather than reactivity. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How can I respond to this in a way that creates growth and value?" Instead of being a victim of circumstances, you become a student of life. Let me give you a practical example. Your boss criticizes your work. If you're operating from reactive consciousness, you might feel hurt, defensive, angry. You might argue, sulk, or mentally rehearse all the reasons your boss is wrong. These reactions create stress, conflict, and missed opportunities for improvement. If you're operating from responsive consciousness, the consciousness created by blessing your mornings, you receive the feedback differently. You might feel the initial emotional reaction, but you don't become enslaved by it. You ask yourself, what truth might be in this feedback? How can I use this information to improve? What does this situation reveal about areas where I can grow? The reactive person focuses on being right. The responsive person focuses on getting better. Guess which one advances faster in their career, builds better relationships, and creates more opportunities? This pattern of response versus reaction shows up everywhere. In relationships, reactive people defend their positions and try to prove they're right. Responsive people seek understanding and look for solutions. In business, reactive people blame market conditions and complain about competition. Responsive people adapt their strategies and find new opportunities. The quality of your responses determines the quality of your life, and the quality of your responses is directly connected to the quality of your morning consciousness. Start the day from elevation, and you maintain elevation throughout the day. Start the day from limitation, and limitation colors every experience. But here's where most people sabotage themselves, often without realizing it. They develop what I call excuse consciousness, a mental pattern that looks for reasons why things won't work rather than ways to make things work. This pattern usually starts within the first hour of waking up. Who here has ever said, "I don't have time for something important"? Raise your hands. Keep them up. Now, who has spent time this week watching television, scrolling through entertainment, or engaging in activities that don't directly contribute to your goals? If your hand was up for both questions, you've just identified excuse consciousness in action. Excuse consciousness is the mind's way of protecting you from the discomfort of growth and change. It sounds reasonable, even logical.
I would start that business, but I don't have enough money. I would improve my health, but I don't have time to exercise. I would learn new skills, but I'm too old. I would pursue my dreams, but the timing isn't right. These aren't reasons, they're excuses masquerading as reasons. Every successful person faced the same obstacles. The difference is that they developed solution consciousness instead of excuse consciousness. And solution consciousness begins with how you bless your morning thoughts. When you wake up and immediately focus on what you can control rather than what you can't, when you focus on possibilities rather than limitations, when you focus on contribution rather than consumption, you train your mind to naturally seek solutions rather than excuses. The most dangerous form of self-sabotage isn't dramatic failure, it's settling for mediocrity. Average people develop what I call comfort consciousness. They find a level of life that's tolerable and then defend that level against anything that might require growth, risk, or change.
Comfort consciousness sounds like this. I'm doing okay. Things could be worse. I should be grateful for what I have. I don't need much to be happy. While gratitude is essential, these phrases often mask fear of pursuing something greater. Excellence consciousness sounds different. How can I contribute more value? What capabilities am I not yet using? Where can I grow? How can I serve at a higher level? The difference isn't ambition versus contentment. It's expansion versus contraction. People with comfort consciousness wake up and mentally rehearse the same routine, the same limitations, the same excuses. People with excellence consciousness wake up and mentally rehearse growth, contribution, and possibility. The first group maintains the status quo. The second group constantly elevates their status quo. This pattern shows up in every area of life. In relationships, comfort consciousness settles for good enough connections and avoids the vulnerability required for deeper intimacy. Excellence consciousness continuously works to understand, appreciate, and serve their loved ones at higher levels. In career, comfort consciousness focuses on security and avoiding risk. Excellence consciousness focuses on creating value and earning advancement through contribution. In health, comfort consciousness makes occasional efforts when pain or crisis demands it. Excellence consciousness maintains consistent practices because they know prevention is easier than cure. The gap between mediocrity and excellence isn't talent or circumstances, it's consciousness. And consciousness is most malleable in those first moments of awareness each morning. Bless your morning with excellence consciousness, and excellence becomes your natural way of being. But there's a subtlety here that many people miss. Excellence consciousness isn't about perfection or pushing yourself until you break. It's about consistent growth, sustainable practices, and showing up as the best version of yourself rather than comparing yourself to others. The person with blessed morning consciousness doesn't wake up trying to be better than everyone else. They wake up trying to be better than they were yesterday. They don't compete with others, they collaborate with their own potential. This creates what I call abundance consciousness, the recognition that there's enough success, love, opportunity, and fulfillment for everyone. When you're growing and contributing, you don't need to diminish others to elevate yourself. You create value that benefits everyone around you. Scarcity consciousness, which dominates most people's thinking, operates from the belief that life is a zero-sum game. If someone else succeeds, there's less success available for you. If someone else is happy, there's less happiness to go around. This consciousness creates competition, jealousy, and limitation. Abundance consciousness recognizes that value can be created infinitely. When you develop skills, create solutions, build relationships, and contribute to others, you expand the total amount of value in the world. Everyone benefits when you operate from your highest potential. Morning blessing naturally cultivates abundance consciousness because it focuses your attention on what you can give rather than what you can get, on what you can create rather than what you lack, on how you can contribute rather than how others should serve you. The person who wakes up asking, "How can I make today meaningful?" approaches the day differently than the person who wakes up asking, "What do I have to get through today?" The first question creates engagement, energy, and opportunity. The second creates resignation, fatigue, and limitation. These patterns compound over time. 30 days of blessed morning consciousness creates noticeable changes in your perspective and results. 3 months creates dramatic transformation. A year makes you almost unrecognizable to your former self. Not because your circumstances magically change, but because your capacity to create and handle circumstances expands exponentially. The patterns are always operating. You're either aligning with constructive patterns or destructive ones. You're either developing solution consciousness or excuse consciousness. You're either cultivating excellence consciousness or comfort consciousness. You're either creating abundance consciousness or scarcity consciousness. The choice is yours, and the most powerful time to make that choice is in those sacred first moments of awareness each morning.
As we move forward, you'll see exactly how to harness these patterns through specific daily practices that transform elevated consciousness from occasional experience into permanent reality. Now comes the moment of truth. Understanding these patterns means nothing without application. Knowledge without action is merely entertainment. You can understand every principle of success, recognize every pattern of limitation, and still live an ordinary life if you don't translate understanding into consistent daily practice. Who here wants to know the exact blueprint for transforming morning consciousness from sporadic inspiration into unshakable reality? Raise your hands. Good. What I'm about to share with you has been tested by thousands of people across every background, every age, every circumstance. It works if you work it. It fails if you ignore it. The first discipline is what I call the sacred 5 minutes. Before you do anything else, before checking messages, before thinking about your schedule, before your mind starts racing through the day's demands, you give yourself 5 minutes of conscious blessing. 5 minutes. Everyone has 5 minutes. You spend more time choosing what to wear.
Here's exactly how it works. The moment you become conscious that you're awake, before you even open your eyes, you speak 3 statements of gratitude. Not mental gratitude, spoken gratitude. Your voice carries power that your thoughts alone cannot match. You might say, I'm grateful for this breath filling my lungs. I'm grateful for this opportunity to create value today. I'm grateful for the people who will benefit from my best efforts. The key is specificity. I'm grateful for my health is weak. I'm grateful that my body carried me through yesterday and is ready to serve me today is powerful. I'm grateful for my family is generic. I'm grateful for my daughter's laughter that reminds me what pure joy sounds like. Creates emotional connection. After gratitude comes intention. You consciously choose how you want to show up in the world today. Not what you want to get, but how you want to give. Not what you hope will happen to you, but what you plan to make happen through you. You might say, today I choose to respond to challenges with creativity rather than frustration. Today I choose to look for ways to add value in every interaction. Today I choose to maintain peace regardless of external circumstances. Then comes visualization, but not the fantasy kind where you imagine yourself on a beach somewhere. Practical visualization where you see yourself moving through the day's challenges with grace, wisdom, and strength. You see yourself responding to difficult people with patience. You see yourself solving problems with innovative thinking. You see yourself maintaining your values regardless of pressure. 5 minutes, 3 gratitudes, 3 intentions, 3 visualizations. Anyone can do this, but most people won't because they think 5 minutes doesn't matter. They want dramatic transformation from minimal effort. They want to plant seeds today and harvest fruit tomorrow. Success doesn't work that way. Success comes from small, consistent actions compounded over time. 5 conscious minutes every morning for 30 days will create more positive change in your life than 30 hours of sporadic motivation spread over a year. But here's what happens to most people. They start strong for 3 or 4 days, then they oversleep one morning and skip the practice. Or they have house guests and feel awkward about speaking gratitude aloud. Or they travel and their routine gets disrupted. 1 missed day becomes 2, 2 becomes a week, and soon they're back to unconscious mornings and wondering why their life isn't changing. This is where discipline separates dreamers from achievers. You don't skip brushing your teeth because you're traveling. You don't skip eating because your schedule is disrupted. Your morning consciousness practice must become equally non-negotiable. Not because you feel like it, but because you've decided that conscious living is more important than convenient living. The second discipline is what I call momentum maintenance. Your 5-minute morning practice establishes the right consciousness, but consciousness must be maintained throughout the day. This requires strategic moments of reconnection with your elevated state. Every time you transition between activities from home to car, from car to office, from one meeting to another, you take 3 conscious breaths and remind yourself of your morning intention. Not a long meditation, just a 3-second reset that keeps you operating from choice rather than automatic reaction. When you encounter frustration, instead of immediately reacting, you ask yourself, how would the best version of myself handle this situation? When you face disappointment, instead of spiraling into negativity, you ask, what can I learn from this experience that will make me stronger? When you achieve something positive, instead of immediately moving to the next challenge, you take a moment to acknowledge your growth. These micro moments of conscious choice accumulate throughout the day. Each time you choose response over reaction, elevation over limitation, solution focus over problem focus, you strengthen the neural pathways of conscious living. Each time you default to automatic patterns, you reinforce unconscious living. The third discipline is evening reflection. Before sleep, you review the day through the lens of growth rather than judgment.
You acknowledge 3 things you did well, 3 things you learned, and 3 ways you can improve tomorrow. This isn't about perfectionism or self-criticism. It's about honest assessment that leads to continuous elevation. Most people either ignore their mistakes or beat themselves up about them. Both approaches prevent growth. Conscious people examine their mistakes with curiosity. What was I thinking or feeling that led to that choice? What could I think or feel differently next time? How can I use this experience to make better decisions going forward? They also examine their successes. What mindset or approach created that positive result? How can I replicate that success in other areas? What does this reveal about my capabilities that I might not have recognized before? This evening practice completes the cycle. Morning consciousness sets intention. Daytime maintenance sustains intention. Evening reflection refines intention. Each day builds on the previous day, creating momentum that becomes unstoppable over time. Now let's address the obstacles you'll face, because you will face them. The first obstacle is inconsistency. Your mind will generate thousands of excuses for why you can't maintain these practices. You'll oversleep, feel rushed, get distracted, face emergencies. Here's the truth. There will never be a perfect time to commit to conscious living. You start where you are, with what you have, right now. The second obstacle is skepticism. Part of your mind will question whether these simple practices can really create significant change. You'll wonder if you're wasting time that could be spent on more important activities. This skepticism is your ego's resistance to transformation. Your ego prefers familiar limitation to unfamiliar growth.
The third obstacle is impatience. You'll want immediate, dramatic results. When you don't see major changes in the first week, you'll be tempted to quit. But consciousness transformation works like compound interest. The benefits seem small at first, then accelerate exponentially over time. The person who practices morning consciousness for 30 days might notice improved mood and better decision-making. The person who practices for 90 days will notice improved relationships and increased opportunities. The person who practices for a year will be living a completely different quality of life. This isn't magic, it's mathematics. Small improvements compounded daily create extraordinary results over time. A 1% improvement every day doubles your effectiveness in 70 days. But most people quit after 7 days because they don't see dramatic change. Who here is willing to commit to these practices for 30 days regardless of how you feel, regardless of obstacles, regardless of whether you see immediate results? Raise your hands high, look around. These are the people whose lives will be dramatically different a year from now. For those whose hands are down, I understand your hesitation. Change feels risky. The familiar, even when it's unsatisfying, feels safer than the unknown. But let me ask you this. What's the cost of continuing your current patterns for another year? What opportunities will you miss? What growth will you forfeit? What regrets will you accumulate? The only thing riskier than changing is not changing. The only thing more painful than growth is the pain of remaining stuck. You already know that what you've been doing isn't creating the life you truly want. How much longer will you wait before trying something different? The transformation begins the moment you wake up tomorrow morning, not next Monday when your schedule is better, not next month when you have more time, not next year when circumstances improve. Tomorrow morning, the first thought you choose when consciousness returns, the first words you speak to bless your day, the first intention you set for how you want to show up in the world. Your life is not determined by your circumstances, and your consciousness is most malleable in those precious first moments of awareness each morning. Every day you wake up, you hold the power to redesign your entire existence, but only if you claim that power consciously, intentionally, consistently. The practices I've shared with you are not suggestions. They are the blueprint that thousands of people have used to transform ordinary lives into extraordinary lives. They work not because they're complicated, but because they're consistently applied. They create change not through dramatic action, but through disciplined repetition. Starting tomorrow morning, you have a choice. You can continue the unconscious pattern of mental complaint and limitation that has created your current results, or you can begin the conscious pattern of gratitude, intention, and elevated thinking that will create entirely new results. The choice is yours. The power is yours. The time is now, because every morning you wake up, you hold the sacred opportunity to bless your consciousness and transform your life. The question is not whether this works. The question is whether you will work it. When you wake up tomorrow, remember this moment. Remember that you have the knowledge, you have the tools, and you have the power to create the life you truly want. All that remains is the choice to begin. Make that choice. Bless your morning. Transform your consciousness. Change your life. The time for ordinary is over. The time for extraordinary begins with your next dawn.